argue that the Treasury will, of course, say no. What if, having had this fight with you and a fight over council tax rebates, what if the government in London said, look, this chap Salmond, he's just obviously doing this to try and engineer an independence vote for Scotland. I think we'll have an independence referendum. We'll just do it a couple of months after he's elected and shoot this fox altogether. Would you boycott that referendum?
Well, can I just pick up you on saying fights? I don't regard putting forward Scotland's interests as picking fights with anyone. I regard putting forward Scotland's interests as what a Scottish government should do and what the public in Scotland expect us to do, not just to surrender before you even make the representations on Scotland's behalf. The referendum that will be held, if we're the government of Scotland, if we lead an administration of Scotland, will be one that's sanctioned by the Scottish people in this election that we're fighting.
Yes, but what if the government in London holds one first?
Well, I'm sorry, nobody else has a mandate to hold a referendum.
What if they do?
Well, that's not even a proposition, never mind anything else. I mean, I'm perfectly happy to answer hypothetical questions, but I think the hypothesis that I'll make is the one that we're planning in this election and based on success.
Nicola Stevens suggested in a newspaper interview over the weekend that the largest party after this election needn't necessarily be in power. Do you agree with them?
I think in a strict arithmetic sense that's probably true. But I'll tell you two reasons why it's probably not a good idea to go down that road. Firstly, I think whoever becomes the largest party will be in pole position to form an administration. But secondly, I think they'll carry a huge amount of moral authority. There has been some opinion poll testing on this, but never mind opinion polls for a second. Just think of the attitude and reflection of the Scottish people. The people, having taken part in a democratic ballot, will expect the leading party, the one who's got the most votes, the most trust, to form the kernel of an administration. And I think they'll find it rather more than passing strange. I think they'll be pretty angry if there's a combination of other parties trying to prevent that happening. So the leading party in democratic terms, by assent of the people, is at least in pole position to form the administration. I hope that's the SNP.
It's been suggested that when you eventually, or if you eventually have a referendum on independence, it might also be a referendum on more devolved powers. There could be an extra question. Would you consider that?
Well, my overwhelming preference is to go ahead on the basis of having a white paper setting out the context of independence in the modern world, in an interdependent world, and ask people on a simple choice, do you want to approve that or not? That's what was done, after all, in devolution. I think that was a reasonable precedent to set, and it's a hugely popular concept because, you know, whatever people think about independence,
would you consider an extra
80–90% of people in Scotland believe in that. I've watched interviewers try to, and successfully in the case, I think, of for example, Nicola Stevens, try to press them into saying what's conditional and unconditional. And in a principled sense, you can make a case for a multi-option referendum. I think, however, there is one thing you have to have, and that's clear choices. Now, no change from the present position is a clear choice, and independence within an interdependent world is a clear choice. I think you'd have to have a much clearer choice. So you'd have to specify
what extra powers you want to devolve?
Certainly, and let me see, you certainly have to do that, and certainly let me make it clear again that my overwhelming preference is to have a straight choice.
I'm just trying to help this budding friendship with your new pal Nicola, you see.
I think probably, by general estimation, I've gone reasonably far in that budding friendship. I think perhaps the other flower might have to bud a bit now.
All right. Why do you think that, well, if we're to believe the opinion polls, the SNP is markedly less popular among women voters than men?
Well, but still more popular than the Labour Party, if we're to believe opinion polls. I think perhaps that's something to do with how we put across our case in the past, and that's why we're trying so hard in this election to put across
the case. What about the way you put about your case?
Well, I think perhaps you said earlier on that you thought perhaps I was too abrasive. Perhaps, and I can see that perhaps was the case in the past. But now we're trying to put across the case not just as a constitutional argument. We're trying to put it across as the benefits in social terms for the families of Scotland of moving to a position of more independence and more empowerment. So, what the SNP wants to do, and there's a lot of evidence for this, is we want to take all of Scotland with us, right through the social classes. There's huge evidence for that, right across the country. We're making ground right across the country. And that means by gender and everything else. We want to take everyone in Scotland on this journey towards more empowerment for our country and more independence for everyone. Everybody's got a stake in the future as we're putting it forward.
Brian Souter, did you hesitate for even a second before you took the money?
No.
Why not?
Because I saw no reason to hesitate.
You must have realised that a lot of people, including in your own party, would say, oh, we're not terribly happy with this. This guy was involved in the whole Section 28 thing. No.
Well, I've known Brian for a number of years, and I had no hesitation whatsoever. I think he's somebody of great quality, and I think publicly we declared the declaration straight away, and I'm pleased to say that he said that he wasn't looking for either a policy or a peerage, which I think is rather important.
All right.
Now, it's an honourable thing to say.
As I'm sure you're only too well aware, there is at least a possibility that the SNP could emerge as the largest party in this election.
I accept that premise.
I thought you might, but the next bit of it was that you would fail to win a seat in Parliament.
I don't accept that premise.
Well, no, but it's a possibility.
Well, anything's a possibility in life, but let me say, I'm in the hands of the electorate.
Should the unthinkable...
Gordon, I'm in the hands of the electorate across the country. I'm in the hands of the electorate in Gordon constituency. I put myself forward for election both as a constituency candidate and as First Minister of Scotland. I'm going to do my best and appeal to people for support.
Should the unthinkable happen, who would you back for First Minister?
I'm backing, hopefully, myself for First Minister by putting myself forward for election. I'm fighting an election in Gordon. I intend to win it.
But you see, you can't imagine Jack McConnell standing in a constituency where he needed... What is it? You need a 7.8% swing, I think it is, to win it.
That's maybe the difference between... or one of the differences between myself and Mr McConnell.
People say about you, that you always... there has to be an element of gambling in this. It always has to be a... this is not a safe leader thing to do.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's a Scottish thing to do. I don't know. But, what it means... when I stood for Gordon, there's two overwhelming reasons. Firstly, as you well know, Gordon overlaps with my current constituency. There are 12,000 people in my current constituency who are in Gordon constituency for the Scottish Parliament. They're my constituents already. That was a significant factor. But the other thing is, and I've been perfectly open about it, at that stage, I think people within and without the SNP had to be demonstrated that we could win the election. And what better way to win the election than to lead from the front? I'm leading from the front.
All right. Let's say you do win, both in your seat and you win the election, right? What did you do in your first week?
Well, in the PR system, your first week tends to be trying to build an administration.
Well, all right. You managed to do that.
No,
the first thing you do as First Minister, then. What's your equivalent of Gordon Brown making the Bank of England independent?
Well, I think the essence of doing that would be not to tell anybody till you've done it, because that's exactly what he did. But we've got serious issues to be addressed in health, in education, in the administration of the Scottish Executive to make it work properly. I think these, and the Scottish economy, which has been underperforming and has to perform better, I think these would be the first things in the entry of any incoming First Minister. They'll be the first things in my entry. All right,
Luke, we're running out of time. A few pretty much factual things I'd just like to know from you. Who would be the Lord Advocate?
Well, that's obviously we've looked at these matters, but you don't announce that before an election.
Would he or she sit in on political discussions in Cabinet?
No.
Right. OK. Will you start a judicial inquiry into the McKee fingerprints?
Yes.
Will you live in Bute House?
We're doing quite well, aren't we? I certainly will use Bute House because I think it's a very suitable residence for Scotland and not just for the First Minister.
Do you get worried when you saw reports at the weekend about people talking about the curtains? Do you try to tell them to shut up?
I didn't see the report. Sorry, I beg your pardon.
Well,
you've lost me. You've lost me with the curtain.
There was talk about
is this some of your gate.
Yes, curtain gate. No, what I'm thinking of is you quipped to a group of photographers the other day you were determined not to have a Neil Kinnock moment. Actually, people are curious. Which Neil Kinnock moment did you mean you didn't?
No. The circumstance was that I was coming down a slope. And if you may remember,
so it was the beach?
It was the beach, yes, the beach.
Oh, it wasn't
Neil Kinnock. No, it was coming down the slope at the manifesto launch, and I successfully managed to negotiate my way down a slope without falling over for the benefit of the photographers. That was the Neil Kinnock moment I was anxious to avoid.
Right. Final point. The absolutely unthinkable happened. You don't emerge as First Minister. Would you give up the leadership of the SNP?
No, we're fighting an election to win. I'm going to hopefully put myself before the people of Scotland and Gordon and in the country.
Stay.
No, we're fighting to win, and with a bit of luck and with the approval of the Scottish people, we'll win it for Scotland.
And if you don't?
No, we'll win it for Scotland.
All right, Alex, thanks very much.
Great pleasure.